Hi, and welcome to another edition of the MSDW podcast. I'm your host, Jason Gumpert, editor at msdynamicsworld.com, and joining me is Dan Morneau, assistant editor. This week, the launch of Dynamics 365, new artificial intelligence offerings, and other 365 news, chiefly coming from the floor of the Dynamic Communities UG Summit in Tampa. So, Dan, let's begin.
Thanks, Jason. British newspapers used to refer to our man in Africa or our man in India when it had one reporter on the ground in a big empire outpost. And this last week, Jason was our man in Florida. Exciting time, Jason?
Yeah, it was an event with a lot of excitement, a lot of anticipation, I would say. But also, it was an event that had some uncertainty to it. You had a lot of existing Dynamics CRM and ERP customers coming to an event where Microsoft was very excited and ready to talk about the future and changes coming in the future, but also trying to reassure users. So they started that, I think, on the first day with I guess you call it the pre-event Dynamics 365 launch event that was broadcast online, and it was attended by quite a few thousand of the user group summit attendees.
Yeah, and one thing before we launch into the stories is for folks who didn't attend, Microsoft was all over this event. They, with folks missing convergence, a lot of the type of content and type of attention you'd get at Convergence. Instead, you got at Summit this year, and none other than Scott Guthrie was the keynote. So that's a look at our first story. Why don't we launch right into it? Summit 2016, first look at Microsoft Dynamics 365 with stories of transformational impact. This, again, was Scott Guthrie, and as much as it was the CRM UG Summit plus AXUG Summit plus NavUg Summit, this hour was devoted entirely to Dynamics 365, to artificial intelligence, to bots, and as Jason often says, there was a lot to unpack here. One thing that was interesting is that Guthrie really launched right into proof of concept. He was making sure you understood, this is not theoretical, this is here, and it is at work at Rolls-Royce, it is at work at Marston's, this British pub with, I believe, something like 1,700 locations. It's at work at TGI Friday, Metrobank, Real Madrid, the soccer team from Spain, AccuWeather. So this is not, once again, a product direction. The direction's already been set. The product is here, and it is achieving real results here. So that is how Guthrie sort of began the presentation, and he moved on to describe how mashing up CRM plus ERP in Dynamics 365 plus ISVs, those third-party solutions that'll be in the app source, all ends up in intelligent actions for companies and winning experience for customers. So the idea is really what can you do with this easy mashup of CRM and ERP rather than implement your ERP this year, rather than begin your CRM journey somewhere in the future. Here it is all at once. And again, you watched it on screen and it was absolutely compelling. They described a unified experience across apps, and I don't know how many times they switched from a laptop to a phone to a tablet, and there you were, wherever you were, on whichever device you were. Dynamics 365 just seemed to work seamlessly, just absolutely seamlessly, and they have gone way, way out of their way to put it in line. For example, your interface for a lot of folks is going to be Dynamics 365 or Office 365 or even Office Outlook. You look at your ribbon, your home ribbon up at the top, and whatever module you're using in Dynamics 365, it is right there. For example, looking at Dynamics 365 Sales is another button in your Outlook ribbon or your Office 365 ribbon. So that was very, very impressive. And again, they emphasized that the point of all of this is intelligence. Really what your customers should be paying attention to is the intelligence that you will have, and to partners, the intelligence you're imparting. He described artificial intelligence and Cortana as really the new inroads to your end-to-end organization. And as I said, he proved it numerous times. One thing that stuck with me was sort of and Jason, you'll get into the relationships later, was this relationships application, or excuse me, relationship sub-function where, for example, you can open up your opportunities by relationship and you can see essentially balloons. You see those circles showing you a great big green one way to your right, which means that this is a hot prospect and this is near close, and a great big red one off to your left, and that says this is in crisis and needs your attention, but it is still conceivable. So bubble diagrams are not new. What they weren't is accessible and easy, and what they weren't is sitting in your ERP as opposed to a very clever forecasting solution that you've bolted on. So put it all together. I was a little dazzled.
Well, that's a key point, Dan, is that they're trying to show, how these things that typically are the result of very long-term, very large investments in BI or custom development for reporting can, in theory, be created in much less time today with sort of an inherent knowledge of the data flowing through these transactional systems or business process automation aspects of CRM or ERP. And that's still the vision. I guess the other thing I would just add is, having been to several convergence events in the past, I thought this keynote from Scott and, with the support of different demos, harkened back, for me anyway, to some of the big vision sessions that Microsoft used to do for Dynamics customers. I think the dynamic, no pun intended, but it was a little different because they were trying to show you something completely new, but it felt like that kind of an environment. And I know in talking privately with some of the folks who were involved at Microsoft, who were putting elements of that keynote together, a lot of care went into trying to put their best foot forward and trying to show off these new features in context. I think the one that landed the best from the people I talked to, just who were in the audience, was honestly, I think, one of the very first demos they gave, which was and I have to go back and check the video, but it was a fairly straightforward process of closing an order, or I guess creating an order from CRM, from Outlook through to CRM, and then very simply switching over to your operations app and having not only a vision of that order coming through and the relevant CRM data, but then starting to see the right contextual data from AX or operations, right in line and flowing through very quickly. And the idea that can all be part of the core solution. The idea that data can flow back and forth is actually quite powerful. It's something that, you could always build in with different integration technology, but it's never been easy. And that should be a nice, honestly, that was probably the simplest demo they did, but people responded very well to it because it's something that they understand, and that I guess should, in theory, be a lot better than it has been in the past, that understanding of data flowing back and forth.
Well, of course it should. The simple fact is it really doesn't.
Right.
Wonderful, but even, say, Salesforce still aspires to that. You've got, I know an architecture, engineering, construction firm that has been having the hell of a time with its, every time I phone them for a project, I hear of the hours that they spent on Salesforce.com. So even something that should integrate easily does not necessarily. And here you just watched them bounce from one application to another, one screen to another. A salesperson, they called up a sales sort of dashboard on the phone, so any salesman, saleswoman in the back of a cab can tap, and there is all your ERP data. There is your availability of product. There is your ability to launch an order then and there. It was like, boy, I tell you, it was exciting. It was like, and I feel like I'm trying to describe a fun park ride to everybody. The sheer slickness of moving back and forth. It's like trying to say, and I lost my Mickey pointy ears at the bottom of the flume, and it was exciting.
Well, I don't know how exciting it was for honestly, I think it is exciting. It could be a fun time if you're considering a brand new implementation. I think for folks who are looking at it, like I said, from the audience there, it was more reserved. I mean, I think they felt it was cool. They felt like Microsoft's definitely taking a step forward, but what does it really mean for them? And that's what the rest of the event was all about. I think getting into more detail on a lot of those sort of shiny new things Microsoft showed off on the first day, and really they were showing them off not just for the folks in that arena in Tampa. They were showing it off for everyone who they hoped was watching online. I actually don't know how many people maybe tuned in for that.
That's right. It was an online event open to everybody. This was the unveiling. This was the coming out party.
Yeah, and around that coming out party, they, off the camera, once the cameras were turned off, they did do more talking to the audience directly. So Scott Guthrie got back on stage at the end of after the event ended formally, and talked and took some of the most common questions people had been asking from the user group members, I guess, asking what's the future of my product? Is anything going away? Am I going to lose support? And, the answer was basically no, don't worry. You're not going to lose support. You will be able to upgrade. All these things are not going to throw a wrench into your own operation. That was the high level line. Don't worry too much. Now, I think as we go a little further here, there were a few things that customers are very worried about, but those are in specific areas. So, and I think a lot of them still have to shake out.
Yeah, there did seem to be that reserve. There did seem to be the demand for tell me more before I get excited. Maybe they did in this next story. Microsoft Dynamics 365 set for November launch. We've established that, with plans for new intelligence apps.
Yeah, so this was maybe a pre-event announcement, or they kind of kicked off their media presence with this announcement that they went over the sort of the full range of marketing messages about what Dynamics 365 is and all that, which I think we've kind of covered in a lot of detail at this point. But the things I took away from that sort of opening announcement was not just that there is this thing, this Dynamics 365, but that they're really making this push to introduce not just updated core products, but a new range, I guess you'd say, of custom or purpose-built apps meant to provide an analytics, meant to pull in disparate data sources and, I guess, quickly, without too much work, provide a set of not just charts and graphs, but things that can actually analyze KPIs and provide metrics that are Microsoft thinks will be relevant to your business. So let's see here. So things like Customer Insight is one of the apps. Relationship Insights is another. There are others planned. They won't talk about what those are exactly yet, I don't believe. But I think Microsoft will try to roll out more of those. My guess is the first two, they're going to see how good the uptake is, how well they can be used, and they'll probably, continue to adjust those. If nothing else, I think they're good selling tools. They can show that vision and the fact that Microsoft it now has. I mean, they can't really be hit with the idea that they don't have a BI strategy anymore. And I think that in combination with their sort of vision for common data model could make this a pretty compelling line of attack in the future in competitive situations. So right now it was really just about announcing, yes, we will have these things. Yes, there will be more of them, and they will be better analytics than we've ever offered out of the box.
How about our next story? Maybe you've already launched into it and answered the questions in it. What Dynamics ERP and CRM users should know as Microsoft prepares Dynamics 365 launch.
Yeah, I'm not going to spend too much time on this one because this is actually, I think this one came out just before the event started. But I think a lot of the things in it still are worth taking a look at if you haven't already. I think three or four takeaways here. One was that on-prem options don't go away, and anyone who thinks that on-prem options are going to be sort of unbounded in their support is probably kidding themselves. I think the writing's on the wall that is not the preferred approach anymore. The CRM on-prem story, actually, that did get a bit more of an update from Microsoft. So on-prem does continue to exist. It will be called Dynamics 365. They've always used the same code base between online and on-prem, and that will continue, apparently. I think the thing that will maybe vary is how often you get updates to on-prem in the future and how well they can really keep up with the with the online. I mean, one consultant remarked to me that, as Microsoft does more and more to really pull in its Azure-based solutions, its Cortana Intelligence and components of Cortana Intelligence, Power BI, other things running through Azure like Logic apps or, other things that maybe they haven't even rolled out yet. The more they try to build that into CRM Online, the harder it's going to be for them to sort of backfill that into CRM on-premise. And so it'll be interesting to see over time really how they try to sort of manage that disparity. And then I think, let's see here, the third thing was, business financials, 365 business financial solution. I didn't cover that all that much, honestly, at the UG event because I was really busy trying to make sure we got everything we could out of the sort of AX and CRM tracks. But I think that ERP SMB story could get a lot more interesting. There's sort of a lot still coming down the pike on that, and it's going to, my feeling is it's going to impact partners before it impacts existing NAV and GP customers in any sort of significant way. I guess if you're a customer of GP or NAV or SL, you could jump in and try to get yourself involved in the new 365 stuff, but it's really the partners who are going to start to feel pressure to really do it first.
Something that has struck me about this and other events is almost a backhanded assurance to partners who insist upon staying on-prem or customers who insist upon staying on-prem. You will not be the red-headed stepchild, I assure you, but you do have red hair and you are my stepchild. It just feels to me like the assurance, almost as if Microsoft itself has some hesitation and wants to see what the next year brings.
Yeah, it's not. This stuff's not going away. I think the message I've sort of taken and written about, I've been told, reflects fairly well what Microsoft has been telling NAV and GP users and partners. If they can sell these products and they can make them profitable for Microsoft probably won't just get rid of them. But if the partners lose faith, it could shorten the overall lifespan of the products. That's probably the reality of it.
Yeah, I'd say it is. In a few years, it's conceivable there comes one of those surprising or not so surprising sunset announcements where you have 2 years to get off it, and support will end July 1st.
Yeah, I mean, I would be surprised if we saw that anytime soon. But I think I think people will keep an eye on that.
Then came a flurry of drill-down announcements and plans from Microsoft, and here we've got a few stories. Let's start with Microsoft updates Dynamics 365 operations, hybrid deployment plans. Azure Stack no longer required.
Yeah, and this one really made me hustle a bit because there was really two parts to this piece. There was the general session for AXA Summit where Microsoft GMs and another Microsoft official kind of got on stage and talked about what's coming in AX7, aka Dynamics 365 operations. And they used some very, I guess, carefully planned language to tell everybody the thing that everyone, I think, in the AX user community wants to know most, which is what's the future of on-premise. And I don't know if Microsoft expected to get that many questions about it and that pointed of an interest in the on-premise plans, but they did come prepared to talk about it. And but what they said was, I got a little confused by it, and I think others in the audience, I was told, did get confused by it. And they clarified it in a second session the next day. But basically, what happened was, I thought, and I think others thought too, that what they were saying the first day was on-premise will be supported with AX7, which is a change in plans, that they will support certain scenarios that can work on premise that won't require Azure Stack. What they really meant was certain business processes can run on AX7 software on premise, but not without the core system running on Azure like everyone else's. So you can't sort of decouple them is the message. You can run certain workloads on premise, but they have to integrate back to, even if it's just one site. And they showed scenarios with, multiple sites with AX on-premise sort of, subsystems running potentially all over the world, with running distribution warehouses, running manufacturing shop floors, running financials locally, all in their own on-premise environments, but they all have to tie back to a single central AX7 Azure system to do the combined financials and to do, I guess, other security and administrative tasks. And that's a must. So there is no pure on-premise. And we didn't really find that out until the second day when someone asked straight up, is there any 100% on-premise? And they basically said, no, there's not. And so that was when it was sort of fully fleshed out. And the article we just updated it with a statement that we got from Microsoft, just again clarifying that the pure disconnected on-premise option would be AX 2012 still. I think the other takeaway from that is that they don't, I think, foresee a scenario any longer where customers could run AX 7 on Azure Stack on-premise. That really didn't come up again. I think that you could potentially run your on-premise component of AX7 with Azure Stack or without it, but there's not going to be there's not going to be like a fully on-prem even with Azure Stack. The quote was that the cloud connection ensures data aggregation, financial reporting, intelligence, application lifecycle management capabilities, backup, disaster recovery, and more. So that's what the cloud connection ensures, and that's how people are going forward. I think we're going to hear a lot more about this from customers, because this lack of a full on-prem option is going to throw quite a few customers for a loop. I know some were complaining already because if they've made multi-million-dollar data center investment in the last 2 or 3 years, let's say, with AX on premise as a component of that, a major component, they're not going to be happy with the idea of switching anytime soon. Yeah, I mean, you have, it's 2016 now, so there's 5 years of runway there. And so we'll see what happens if customers can, how they sort of come to grips with that. I think the flip side of that is you do have several years of runway left here to work on your on-premise systems. But I mean, if you look around in 5 years, how many fully on-premise systems do you really expect to have as options to move to just in the marketplace overall? I don't know how much of a realistic scenario that will be. So I think Microsoft will keep sort of adjusting its messaging on this and probably adjusting its architectural approach too over the next few years to try to make that easy. I know we haven't got to it yet, but the idea of upgrade tools and upgrade management from 2012 and from 2009, AX 2009, was another big topic that will be kind of kicking into gear as legacy customers do look at what they really will have to do to get onto the new version.
Yeah, it is. It is. It does seem to me that they have allowed for Dynamics 365 that you could make the leap today, or you could, if you're a big boat, you can turn more slowly, but you need to turn. Next up, Microsoft readies Dynamics 365 customer engagement apps with added analytics, new partnerships.
Yeah, so this was what I would kind of call a classic Jujhar Singh Dynamics CRM sort of roadmap vision session, where he just unloaded, an hour plus of content and functionality and vision and future planning on the CRM UG Summit audience at the event. It's something he's very good at, and it's just he'll put a ton of stuff out there without really a ton of context. So it's not really there's no hand holding in these kinds of sessions. There's no, here's how we'll make you feel good and confident about doing this yourself. There's none of that. It's really, here is all the cool new stuff that we've got planned, that we've figured out, that we're delivering in the next 6 months or whatever time frame it is. Get ready for it, because it's coming and it's awesome. And so it was a real combination of different features and functions and integrations and partnerships that are all coming to the CRM Online, Dynamics 365, sales and service apps and marketing apps in the coming months. I think the one thing that people took away was, how are you going to do all this by the November launch? And the answer is they're not. They're going to start rolling out features as they do the November launch, and a few of the capabilities will be in CRM Online when people next do those updates, those sort of typical semi-annual updates, like they've always done. One of the biggest things is it will change their user interface. They'll stop saying CRM, it'll start saying 365, which is really not a big deal. But then, I mean, there's just a range, and I'll just touch on a few of the things we talked about. The customer insights and relationship insights apps, those will start to become available, where companies can like kind of install those through, I guess, through Office 365 and or maybe through Dynamics 365 through AppSource, and start kind of connecting those to their CRM systems, and then trying to find ways to start using them, see how much they can actually get done with those apps out of the box versus having to adjust them. And then greater integration with Outlook was something that didn't actually get demoed very well. The demo failed. Basically, they tried to show intelligence in analyzing incoming emails and sort of routing them properly and prioritizing them through the use of Cortana Intelligence Suite's AI capabilities, through sort of reading the emails, trying to judge how important they are. The demo didn't work, which I thought was a little worrisome, because that sounded like kind of in this new era, that's sort of a meat and potatoes kind of a demo, and for whatever reason, demos do fail, but that was a kind of a bad one to fail, I think, in front of everybody. So it just signaled that there's a lot of work still left to do before these are going to really be fully production ready, these updates. But then I guess the other one I would talk about was the new partnerships, and I just put out some even more content on those new partnerships, but those were announced in the keynote or the general session for CRM UG Summit. We're going to see new predictive lead scoring through an OEM relationship with Versium, which will basically allow you to sort of give Versium your existing marketing lists, either ones that have worked well or ones that haven't, or give them both and let Versium figure out why one's working better than another, and use that to predict for the future who should get what kind of marketing campaigns, who's going to be most likely to respond to a particular type of campaign. The other element to that's an interesting twist is that you can then start buying like net new leads from Versium. I guess they have sort of a database of millions and tens of millions of contacts and potential sales leads, and they'll say, well, we know this type of profile of people who have been successful with your kind of marketing efforts or sales efforts. We'll sell you a list of people who don't know you, but we think are high likelihood to also be open to your kinds of offers based on industry, geographies, company size, role. I don't know what other factors they might use, but that's what Versium offers. And customers are going to get that baked in. I mean, I think you have to pay extra if you want to buy new leads, but you will get that kind of analysis as part of the 365 sales and marketing app capabilities. The other one is CafeX. It's a partnership, not an OEM, so you would have to buy it separately. But really, what it does is a lot of what Parature did, which was chat and customer omnichannel support, I should say, for customers. Everything from just simple web chat with someone who's on your website, to co-browsing, to voice communication, up to video communication, and even I think it's like co-browsing. So you could actually have the support person take over the customer or prospect's browser session and actually start browsing for them to help them pick out an item or to just use whatever online tools they're supposed to be using. It was cool technology to see. I hadn't seen them before, but it sort of supersedes Parature, and that's really a whole nother topic. That the Parature solution is going to be going into a support only mode very soon.
We talk about CRM, rolling in, and it just strikes me as a bit bold and a tad risky to not have kind of a labeled CRM product. And I realize that's not what's happening here for several years, but to have an ERP product whereby you don't buy CRM, I kind of see an initial inertia over that.
Oh, sure. Yeah, there's some concern over that. I mean, I think there's a little bit of concern over the naming that they've got right now. Operations, from what I've heard, was sort of a fill-in name that just never got changed. And, sales, service, and marketing apps, there's a concern among partners, especially, that the sales sort of funnel or the sales performance in the partner channel is going to dip initially as partners try to sort of make this big jump from CRM to these apps, and that hopefully there will be a big rise on the other side of that dip as there's sort of this trough of uncertainty or whatever you want to call it, where there's just this changeover, and that they'll come out on the other side stronger and with a better message. But that's a concern right now for partners, and there were a lot of partner questions at the event. Not so much just asking about these individual features, but how is Microsoft going to help them be ready right from the start in November when CRM just goes away, and this is what they're left. This is what they're selling instead. From a sort of positioning standpoint, it's not that the features get hurt at all; they get better. But the perception, the customer awareness, the prospect awareness, all those things have to sort of get up to speed with the product, I guess you might say.
Yeah, it does seem that Microsoft understands these hesitations. However, it didn't write any of this in a vacuum. They had, of course, private previews and such. They worked arm in arm with Rolls-Royce, with Real Madrid. So it isn't as if they never asked customers about this. Of course they did, and of course they did on their I forget the name of that platform, more or less the suggestion platform. But this is absolutely, it seems to me, a largely customer-designed application. But Microsoft is in a few places saying, you think you want that, but you want that. And prescribing to a degree. And they're Microsoft, and they might know. In which case, I guess I would advise somebody patience. Patience. It isn't exactly what you require today. Chances are it will be, or this is what you require today, and chances are you might have been a little fuzzy on that. Both things are conceivable.
Yeah, a lot of it's timing too. Partners are dying to get their hands on the new software and get some preview customers onto it. I did get word that a TAP program at least for the CRM features should be coming in the next week or so, according to some Microsoft representatives. Partners haven't seen it yet. They haven't been able to touch it yet, which worries them. They got to do demos. They got to make sure their ISV solutions are going to be ready to start supporting this as soon as possible. And, with November almost upon us, that's a concern. And so that's part of that dip that they want to get through as quickly as possible, and get onto the other side. I don't think like I said, I don't think people are really negative on what the product's going to have in it. I think there's going to be some good feelings, you might say, but related to the fact that MDM, Dynamics Marketing, and Parature are in fact going away, and they're just going to recede into the background, as I wrote about over the weekend, because Microsoft seems to have gotten the message that if they're going to introduce new capabilities, they've got to be part of the CRM platform. They've got to work with XRM. They've got to understand XRM. They've got to understand CRM entities. They've got to be part of the same business process management that CRM's been improving, and that anything else just is not going to get traction. So they're doing good things in that sense. The CafeX stuff is cool. I think it could really get people's attention. I think there is this Adobe Marketing Cloud partnership. We'll see how well that gets traction. I don't know what the expectations are there, but that's maybe still the one outlier that's really not part of CRM. But I think more and more of the capabilities really are becoming part of CRM to go forward. And if you see more acquisitions in the future or more OEM partnerships, they should be fairly well integrated and not really separate third-party apps.
Finally, the week ended with announcements from Dynamic Communities, the organizers of the event, of 2 new Dynamics 365 user groups. We went on to say Dynamics 365 Enterprise and Business Edition user groups were announced at a record-setting summit. And by record-setting, we mean about 1.6 times as many attendees as 2015. There were over 6,500 Dynamics partners, users, and Microsoft employees attending this year, which again represents a 63% increase. Here, again, a bit of a surprise. Microsoft Dynamics 365 hasn't hit the shelves yet. You can't drive it till November 1st, but still, Dynamic Communities felt there is enormous enough interest to create these 2 UGs. And one thing about this organization I think that is marvelous is they really have their fingers on the pulse of what will and will not work. These are not folks who waste their time. They do their scouting. They do their upfront marketing research. They are ceaselessly polling their user bases, and there is support for these 2 user groups, which I find impressive. And again, the attendance this year, we profiled all of the chairs, and they said they were aiming at conceivably doubling, but otherwise would be satisfied with 50% new enrollees, and they achieved that. So put it all together, if it isn't excitement, it is tremendous interest.
Yeah, the dynamic communities (DCI) are in a very interesting position as user groups that have been focused on the traditional products and will continue to be, I know. But now as the traditional products evolve, some of them anyway, AX and CRM evolve into 365, and Nav to some extent is also evolving toward 365, though not directly, but sort of in parallel. They have an interesting transition to look at themselves, and I think these new UGs for 365 SMB and enterprise represent that effort to just stay current. I think it'll be very interesting to see how, not only what the uptake is, but sort of how people move over perhaps from AX or CRM. Is there this? Do existing customers sort of internalize the 365 brand and want to make that move, or not? Do some of the 365 capabilities and best practices and so forth, or stay in those entrenched user groups? But yeah, the DCI has those two. I know they're also launching a Power BI user group, which I think will look a little more broadly. So in addition to sort of they've now absorbed or are partnering with the Dynamics SL user group, which has always been sort of volunteer led. Now it's being led by DCI, which is a company, not a sort of volunteer organization anymore, to give it sort of some administrative, I guess, oversight and help it sort of align with the other groups that are seeing this good momentum. And as convergence has gone away, I guess maybe I'll leave it at this, but as convergence went away and Envision took over on Microsoft's event calendar, user groups are only stand to benefit from that. They certainly did this year with this bump. I think they see a lot more opportunity for these in-person conferences to grow. As we don't even know what's going to happen with Envision, the one that's scheduled for February. By all accounts, it's kind of an unknown right now. It's only about 5 months out. So no one really knows what's going to happen at that event this year in LA. So the more that we wait on that, I think the more that Dynamics partners and users turn to this this conference as one where they can actually get value out of, and they know what to expect.
Everybody has thought this. I'll be the first to say it. I applaud Dynamic Communities for not naming this SL user group Slug. I have no idea what they're going to do instead.
They've had this group for a while. Yeah, I think people just try not to call it Slug. It's actually a group I haven't been very involved in personally. We've covered a little bit of what they've done in the past, and I know that they're an active and engaged group of, and they draw hundreds of people to their conferences every year. I think maybe they'll start to fold it in with the other ones in the future. But but they've got a legacy. They've got their own board of what do you call it? Sort of just a board of directors of their own. I think they're going to just find a way to work with DCI.
Yeah. And it was a little surprising that here they are going for really small and medium enterprise solutions, and that SL really didn't have a story to bring to that vision, which was a bit of a surprise.
Well, SL sort of found its niche as a product that gets very few updates. That still does the job for companies that want it, and that has had its product management outsourced to a third-party firm that knows it very well. There's theories that GP could potentially go that same direction in the future. No one's saying it is, and there's no indication that it really is, but it seems like it's been working successfully for SL as a sort of legacy product. So could GP go that way? Yeah, perhaps. And it certainly wouldn't. I wouldn't see that as something that would hurt GP. It's probably a whole conversation for another day to get into that kind of topic. But yeah, I think maybe the SL folks can teach the GP people some things in that regard.
Great. Well, let's move on to next week. Jason, what stories do you have coming up?
We are going to be working on a range of things in the coming weeks. We've got a very busy webcast schedule with 5 or 6 this week, and probably just as many in the following week that we're going to be running and tracking and probably reporting on a few of. We do have some more Dynamics 365 coverage coming out. Other things we've learned from last week's event and from talking to partners and users in Microsoft. We also should have an interesting NAV customer case study coming out as an article on a dealer network and managing that with Nav. So several interesting potential things. How about you?
We'll have a full week. I've got Microsoft earnings on Thursday, so we cover that every quarter, and that'll be interesting to hear, particularly coming right after these events of last week. Freelancing in the Dynamics channel, some Frank Group findings. Surprise, surprise, about a quarter of your people want to go freelance. Did you know that? We'll explore why. And this looks like a really fun story. AX for firearms retail. No kidding, one of our writers actually writes true crime stories, and we gave it to her so she wouldn't be confused by the terminology. And finally, getting started with bots. This is a guest ed from CRM MVP Andre Margono. And this is a great one. The bots that were described last week, for example, over the last couple of weeks, for example, the NFL fantasy football bot, a bot used by, I think, Rolls-Royce for interaction with your machine engine. These things are real, and you can build them. So we'll explore how.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to see that one on bots. I think the faster we can see more CRM bot stuff, the better.
So let's wrap up.
Thanks, Dan. This has been the MSDW podcast. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to be on the podcast, maybe you have a product release, or maybe you're a consultant with a case study, or a VAR with a unique slant on the Dynamics product news or ecosystem, drop us a line. You can reach me by email, jgumpert@msdynamicsworld.com.
And I'm Dan Morneau, assistant editor at DMAURNO@msdynamicsworld.com.
And until next time, we are MS Dynamics World signing off.